Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. Let's just jump straight into it. UFC 291, crazy, insane card. I don't even know where to begin because there's so many great fights and there's so many things to talk about. I'd like to talk about the fight that wasn't on the card first. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Michel Pereira. Now, I'm sure, there's people who are feeling different kind of ways about this. There's probably people who are on one side who are like, man, why didn't Wonderboy just accept the fight? And there's people who are on the other side who are saying things like, yeah, we understand why he didn't accept the fight. But here's the thing. I agree with what Stephen Wonderboy Thompson did, and here's why. I think that there are not enough consequences for fighters when they miss weight. And I think it's very important that there are consequences for that because that's part of your job. And part of your job is to make weight. Part of your job is to show up to the fight, right? But the first job that you need to complete is making weight. Now, let's read what Stephen Wonderboy Thompson had to say about this. He wrote on Twitter, "Unfortunately, my fight with Michel Pereira will no longer be going forward. First off, I'm sorry to all the fans who were looking forward to my fight. I'm gutted for my coaches, my family, and all the people who helped me throughout camp to be ready and prepared to go to battle. I made weight this morning, as I have done every fight during my 11-plus year career. My opponent did not. This isn't the first time I've had an opponent miss weight, and given how that played out previously, myself and my team felt that it was ultimately not smart for us to move forward with this fight. At my age and given what I've accomplished in this sport, I'm not here to be a gatekeeper. I'm here to fight for and win a UFC title. When I step into the octagon, no one else is in there but me and my opponent. This isn't a video game, and both of us are putting our health and our careers on the line. If I don't finish my opponent, I risk losing a decision, even if it's a split decision, as what happened when I fought Darren Till, and almost the same exact scenario played out back then. Fighters who miss weight face far few consequences and are often allowed to fight with a significant competitive advantage. This appears to be happening more and more these days. Hopefully, the decision to not move forward with the fight will discourage other fighters from missing weight in the future, and also hope to encourage fighters that face this situation to follow suit and not allow this to happen to them. I'm healthy, and I will look to get back into the octagon as soon as possible, but on a level playing field as I continue to pursue my quest of winning the UFC welterweight title." Again, I agree with what Stephen Wonderboy Thompson did. At the highest level, personally, I think that missing weight is completely unacceptable. And we've seen time and time again that the UFC does not really reprimand fighters for missing weight. The most notable one that comes to mind is Khamzat Chimaev when he missed weight for fighting Nate Diaz by a crazy amount. I don't remember exactly the weight, but I think it was like something like 7 or 8 pounds or something. And they had to switch around the whole card just to make sure that everybody got to fight. He ended up fighting Kevin Holland, and we know how that went. But my issue with this is that, again, fighters who miss weight are rarely ever reprimanded. That means that if that fighter goes out and they end up getting a highlight reel finish, after about a week or so, no one really talks about the fact that they missed weight. Everybody talks about the highlight finish that they got. Everybody talks about what's next for them, what the next step is going to be. So in reality, the only thing that they lose is 30% of their purse, which is a bigger purse because they won the fight. And yes, they may not get that $50,000 bonus, but again, you won your fight. So you're getting your show and your win money. They take 30% of that, but it's better than you only getting half of your fight money because you only showed up and then you lost. So you're still coming out on the plus side on that. And then you get all the benefits of your next fight and getting another ranked opponent or whatever the case may be. There is no step back for you. We should not have to deal with fighters who do these kinds of things. I think that we should be more hard on the fighters that are missing weight because I don't know if you guys know this, but as a fighter myself, the last like 3 to 4 pounds are usually pretty difficult, especially those last two. It's super hard on your body. And especially when you've spent, a few hours in the sauna or in the hot tub or however it is that you're choosing to cut weight. And, you're just trying to get that last pound out. that last little bit of water. Sometimes you do it all, the night before. Sometimes you do it in the morning right before weigh-ins. But either way, those last few pounds are always the most difficult. And so when you skip that and you don't push your body to that level where, we've seen a lot of fighters when they cut a lot of weight, they end up in the fight, drained and looking tired after a few minutes. And if you don't cut that weight, you're kind of avoiding that part of the weight cutting process because maybe you're trying to be a weight bully or you didn't cut weight correctly. But the idea that you don't have to cut those few pounds, don't have to stress your body, and you get to show up basically 4 pounds overweight, deciding that, I'm still going to fight. And my opponent is still, I know, because most fighters do, I know that my opponent is going to accept the fight. So I can slack off here and hope to win big in the fight. So that way all this can go away. And again, I do not think that that's fair. And I agree 100% with Wonderboy. But here's the problem. At 40 years old, the UFC is not going to be doing him any favors anymore, because he declined this fight. And although I personally think that he did the right thing, we already know how the UFC is, and they're probably not going to let him live this one down. So we're probably going to end up seeing Wonderboy in a really tough fight soon, and they're going to make it really difficult for him to make his way to that title. Do I think that he would win a UFC title? Depends on who's champion. It's probably more likely that he can beat somebody like a Leon Edwards, even though I personally think that Leon would beat him. But the idea that he's even going to get close to a title shot now is probably gone because of him declining this fight. And it's unfortunate that these kind of things happen. And now because he took the road that he should take, which is not accepting a fight with someone who did not do their job, the job of making weight, where we signed a contract and you said that you were going to show up and be on weight, and you didn't. And now I have to accept whatever, weight you come in at because the promotion says so. I don't think so. And it sucks that we didn't get to see him fight, but I hope that maybe they rebook this fight in the future and we get to see it anyway. And I hope now, after this has happened, that we can see that fight and that Wonderboy wins. Now, let's talk about the main event. We just gonna start from the top and go down because there's so much craziness that happened in that Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje fight. First, I want to say I was completely wrong about this. I thought that Dustin Poirier was gonna win the fight. I didn't think it was gonna be a finish. I thought that it was gonna go all 5 rounds, and I thought that Dustin's boxing would have been able to keep him on the winning side. But it seems like I was wrong. For what it's worth, I do think that Dustin was winning the first round, especially with that. I think it was a right hook that caught him, cut his eye. He also couldn't see for a little bit, had a couple flurries in the first round that rocked him. So I thought that Dustin was carrying out, the fight pretty well. But I'll tell you a few things that I noticed that I don't know if you guys did, but very, very good strategy change on Justin Gaethje's part. Because if you guys notice in the first fight, he was throwing a lot to the inside leg because Dustin Poirier is a southpaw and Justin Gaethje is a orthodox fighter. And so instead of throwing the inside low kick, which got him countered in the first fight, he started throwing the outside kick, which also brings him out of the way for the left hand of Dustin Poirier, which I thought was a very good read and a good strategy change on Justin Gaethje and his camp's part. Another thing that I think is important to note here is the fact that Justin Gaethje was throwing head kicks. He threw, I think, 2 head kicks in the first round, both of which Dustin Poirier blocked him, like no problem. But I'd never expected for it to land the way that it did in the second round. And I don't think any of us thought it was going to land the way that it did in the second round. In fact, personally, I thought that Dustin Poirier was going to be the one to catch Justin Gaethje with the head kick because of how Justin was ducking his head and then kind of had his hands up trying to defend the kicks. And we obviously know that's not the correct way to defend a kick, but Justin Gaethje kind of does whatever he wants when it comes to defending kicks. We've seen that in the past. And if anybody was going to get knocked out with a head kick or a knee or anything with the legs, I thought it would have been Justin Gaethje with how he was ducking his head into those kicks, especially after the Dustin Poirier's corner told him in between rounds that they wanted him to look for that kick again because of how Gaethje was ducking. But as time moved on and the second round started, we saw that right head kick land, and mean, the fight was pretty much over as soon as it landed. But something that I think is very important too about what happened with that head kick is the fact that Dustin, two things. One is that, yes, it did look very similar to the Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman fight, which, by the way, that was so corny that y'all put that side by side on the screen, especially with Justin being there, his teammate being Kamaru Usman, and Kamaru Usman also being in the cage, that or in the arena. That was kind of corny. I'm not gonna lie to you, but it is what it is. Anyway, so when he landed that kick, the beautiful thing about it, and the thing that matters the most when you're throwing same side attacks, especially when you're throwing same side cross to head kick, is that the cross has to touch the person, or at least be a threat of touching the person, so that either one, they get hit with it because their head doesn't move, or two, they try to slip that kick, and in hopes that they slip the direction they're supposed to, they go to the outside. And then because they go to the outside, you get them right in the neck. And that's exactly what happened. He caught him right in the side of the neck, and I think right where he caught him, his body just shut down, because you can see when he fell on the floor, he was still coherent, right? He could still see, but I think he couldn't move because his body froze up. In case you guys don't know, if you haven't watched enough Muay Thai, when you get kicked in the neck, like, you're still awake, but your body just completely shuts down. So again, beautiful kick, beautiful finish from Justin Gaethje. We're going to talk about what's next for him. On one hand, I see everybody talking about he needs to get a title shot now. I think the only way we should see a title shot personally is if Charles Oliveira beats Islam Makhachev. And the reason I say that is because if Islam happens to beat Charles again, which I think it's very possible considering what happened in the first fight, then are we not expecting Islam to do the same thing that Khabib did to him? I would think so. Like, there's nothing, Justin Gaethje hasn't shown me anything that tells me that a fight with Islam will go any differently than the fight did with Khabib. Granted, he was a little bit more hesitant when he fought Khabib because he was so worried about that takedown, but I just don't see that fight going any other way. The fight that I would like to see, the fight that makes more sense to me, is Charles Oliveira. And if he does get a chance to fight Charles Oliveira, I think that would be a very different fight. He would have a very different approach instead of, going balls to the wall with him, because we all know what happens when you fight Charles. If Charles starts walking you down and you get into the fire, he's going to stay in the fire. And it unfortunately didn't go well for Justin Gaethje the first time, but the second time I think it could go a little bit better considering they already had the first fight. He kind of knows what to expect. The other fight that I think makes zero sense is Conor McGregor. Listen, I've made it a point to ignore whenever Conor says anything, because we all know whenever these fights are happening, he's fucking Mr. Twitter fingers, just typing away, talking trash about any and everybody, trying to stir up other fights. But we all know that Conor McGregor does not want to fight Justin Gaethje. Every single one of us know that. Every single one of us knows that. He does not want to fight him. And for anybody to act like he does is ridiculous at this point. Conor's just talking. And I don't know why he's talking, especially to somebody like Justin Gaethje, because we all know, I don't know about y'all. I know what's going to happen if they fight. Justin Gaethje's knocking him the fuck out. Excuse me, the fuck out. That's one thing. But the second thing, how disrespectful is this to Michael Chandler? Because Michael Chandler's been waiting for you. He's been sitting around waiting for you to accept the fight that you technically already accepted by accepting The Ultimate Fighter and doing that show. And then here we are, months later, you're still not in the USADA pool. There's no real reason for any of us to believe that you're going to enter it anytime soon, which means you're probably not going to be fighting anytime soon. The list goes on. We could talk about this all day long, but I feel for Michael Chandler because he's been sitting there patiently waiting for his money fight. And I just don't see, I don't think that Conor's really interested in fighting him. I really don't. And so, we'll see what happens with that, but I don't think that Justin Gaethje should or would even consider fighting Conor, especially after he said at the post-fight press conference that he doesn't want to fight anybody that's on steroids. And we know how Conor feels about people saying that he's on steroids, so most likely that fight's not going to happen now, but we'll see. Moving on to my favorite fight of the card, of course, brother Derrick Lewis versus Rogerio de Lima. Now, I thought that this fight was going to be a banger. I thought they were going to be going back and forth. I actually figured that de Lima would try to take Derrick Lewis down. He didn't even get an opportunity because Derrick Lewis, with the fucking flying knee out of nowhere, runs out, channeling his inner Jorge Masvidal, flying kneeing this man immediately, like literally within the first 2-3 seconds of the fight, and then mauls him for the rest of it until he gets the stoppage about 30 seconds into the first round. Holy shit. Did we think that that was going to happen? I'll tell you right now, I didn't think it was going to happen. Not like that. If Derrick Lewis was going to get a knockout, that for sure I thought it would be, right hand, left hook, uppercut, something with the hands, right? Never did I think, Derrick Lewis would be out here throwing flying knees, landing them, and then finishing the fight shortly after. So shout out to Derrick Lewis. And I also want to say this, man. Derrick Lewis is a blueprint for fighters. If you want to see what an all-encompassing fighter is, you want to talk about pre-fight interviews, you want to talk about post-fight interviews, you want to talk about actual performances in the fights, you want to talk about post-fight celebrations, funny moments, memorable moments. Derrick Lewis is just, what more can you say besides superstar? Right? But here's the thing, and I didn't know this until after the fight was over. He's now a free agent. That was the last fight on his UFC contract, which is a crazy way to go out with a flying knee finish in your last fight on your UFC contract as a heavyweight. Now, part of me thinks that, Derrick Lewis is probably going to stay with the UFC. Although I don't know how long he's going to stay with the UFC because they're notorious for giving pretty long contracts. And if I'm Derrick Lewis, I would like to get like a 4-fight contract. That way, I can finish that in like 2 years. Give me 2 fights per year. If I make it to the title, great. If I don't, it's no big deal. But increase that pay, of course. Increase that pay. Give that man his money. He's a superstar. And, let him fight his career out. Now, there is obviously other fights that could happen, considering he's a free agent now. Francis Ngannou going over to PFL, knocking some dudes out over there, going over to ONE and knocking some dudes out over there. And I was having a conversation with one of my friends, Tehran, shout out to Tehran, who was telling me that he feels like he should go to ONE because he would be one of, if not the highest paid one heavyweight athlete. And I personally think he could beat all those dudes at heavyweight, with the exception of Buchecha, because we all know Buchecha is going to shoot a double leg and submit him in the first round. No offense. Again, I love Derrick Lewis. I do. But we know what Buchecha is going to do to him if he goes to ONE. So, personally, I don't want to see Derrick Lewis boxing. I would love to see him stay in the UFC, finish out his career, maybe get another 4-fight contract and ride off into the sunset after those 4 fights. Or sign with another organization. I would stay away from PFL personally, just because of all the stuff that's going on right now with the Bellator merger and all that kind of stuff. Actually, maybe not. Maybe not. Because then if he ends up fighting some of the heavyweights they have in Bellator, that would be good. That would be good. That would be good. But I think ONE would probably be a better option for him. I would like to see him in ONE if he goes anywhere else. So I think that would be good. Let's talk about the co-main event. Jan Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira. This one was a very interesting one. And before I even get into it, I just want to say I would love for you guys to, in the comments, tell me what you guys thought about this fight, who you thought won and why you thought they won. And if you're in the live chat, just obviously write it in the live chat. I'd love to see it. This fight was okay. It wasn't the most exciting fight, but there were a few things that I did enjoy. Number one, we all knew that this was the game plan and should have been the game plan from Jan if he was a smart man. And he was a smart man, at least in the portion of the game plan, right? I think that was a very smart game plan. And for the first round, it worked out great, right? Like the first round, it worked out. He got the takedown. He controlled Alex on the ground pretty much for the whole round. I think he went for the takedown within the first 30 seconds. So, and he controlled him on the ground that whole time. So that was a great round for Jan. Hands down, we already know Jan won that round, right? Then we move into the second round. And I think that was a great round for Alex, obviously. He outstruck him. Dude, his jab to the body is beautiful. Those calf kicks, I know the broadcast was talking about it. For once, I listened to the fight with commentary, and I was thoroughly disappointed, but we can talk about that a little bit later. But what was great about this was the fact that Alex was looking really good in that second round. He was. And I thought that as the second round was going through, that there were a few moments where his hands were a little low. He was putting a lot of pressure on Jan. His hands were a little low, and I was like, man, Jan hits kind of hard. So we don't want to be in that space where you could catch a left hook or a right hand, and you're that close with your hands down. But Alex made it through that round. I thought he won that second round. Now, the third round, I think, is the one where everybody's a little bit confused and hesitant, right? Because on one hand, we saw a lot of striking from Alex. He defended a lot of those takedowns early in the round. Was doing some really good work with the calf kicks again, good punches to the body, good hooks to the head. But he wasn't throwing in combinations, which I thought he should have. And surprisingly, Jan had the cardio to throw in the third round. He had a couple flurries, maybe like 2 or 3 good flurries where he landed a few shots. But for the most part, it was Alex up until the end of the third round where Jan ended up getting a takedown. Now, I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit iffy on it because I was like, Jan got this takedown, and you know how the judges can be sometime, but I think that we shouldn't think about things in the way that, like, oh, we know how the judges are sometimes. How are you supposed to score this? And if you look at how you're supposed to score it, Alex did most of his damage striking. He controlled the striking. That's where the fight took place. Most of the third round was striking. So when Jan gets the takedown, in order for him to be able to win that round, he has to do more damage in that minute than Alex did, or have more significant moments in the time that he has him on the ground. I think it was like the last minute and a half or so, than Alex did for the rest of that round. And unfortunately, I don't think that Jan did that. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with me, and you're going to be like, oh, you're crazy, whatever. I did want Alex to win. Let me start by saying that. I did want Alex to win, but I can also be unbiased and look at a fight from an unbiased point of view and say, even though I wanted this person to win, they didn't. In this case, I think they got it right. I do think that Alex won the fight, but Jan is saying that it's a robbery. We gotta stop throwing around this word robbery. We do. We have to. Because when you start saying things like robbery implies that it was a clear and decisive victory, and it wasn't. That was a close fight. That was a very close fight. So for anybody to think that Jan should have won that fight and it was a robbery, like saying that Jan should have won the fight, okay, it was a close fight. I'm not going to argue with you. I see why you would think that. I don't agree, but I could see it. Now, for anybody saying robbery implies that he won 2 rounds or more decisively. If you think that Jan won 2 rounds or more decisively, you're crazy. And that was not a robbery. So we could just end it at that. Now, as far as the what's next for Alex, who the fuck knows? Because at the end of the day, we don't know what's happening at light heavyweight. Is he going to end up fighting Yuri for the title? Who knows? Is Jamal Hill going to be back in time to fight whoever, is the champion? Who knows? We have no idea what's going to happen. But I will tell you this. I personally don't think that Alex Pereira is beating Yuri, and I don't think that he can beat Jamal Hill. Given what I saw on Saturday, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. With that being said, I think that Alex should take his time. Don't rush into a fight, because I'm going to tell you right now, if he fights Yuri right now or in the next few months, I just don't see him winning. Now, obviously, he has a puncher's chance, right? He has a lot of power. He has very good striking. And we know if he finds a way to touch Yuri, he could put him to sleep. However, you got to be able to touch him in order to do that. And I don't know if he would be able to do that, but we'll find out. We'll find out soon. All right. Now we're moving on to Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. If any of you thought that this fight was going to go any differently than it did, aside from the submission, because I know that was unexpected for me. I don't know about anybody else, but I never thought that Bobby Green would be submitting Tony Ferguson. But I don't really think that I'm just not surprised. I'm not surprised by this at all. I knew that Bobby Green was going to be faster. I knew that he was going to have more power. I knew his footwork was going to be better. I just didn't really see any place that Tony could win besides maybe being a little bit unorthodox and catching him with something crazy, or catching him on the ground in the grappling. But as we saw, Bobby Green was very prepared for any kind of grappling that Tony had, defended the takedowns well, defended the knee bar attempt, defended all the submission attempts from guard, all the triangle and armbar attempts. There wasn't really anything that Tony had for him anywhere besides in that first round where he dropped him. But even then, it was like it was a clean punch, but I think Bobby Green was more off balance than anything else. And I love Tony Ferguson. This, by the way, I don't want this to seem like I'm slandering Tony. I'm just being real about what I saw. I would never call for a fighter's retirement, and I'm not going to start doing that today. As a fighter myself, I wouldn't want anybody to tell me when, I need to retire, I'm too old, or this or that. And I know that, a lot of people are saying it out of love because they don't want to see Tony Ferguson get hurt. They don't want to see him get beat up or anything like that. But at what point do we call it a career? I think that at this point, Tony Ferguson should really start thinking about other ventures. And again, I'm not saying that he needs to stop fighting right now, but I do think that it's time for him to start looking into other businesses and other ventures that he can spend his time doing. Because again, as I know, as a fighter, it's very difficult to walk away from something you spent your whole life doing. As someone who doesn't want to see Tony Ferguson get hurt anymore, I would like for him to just start thinking about what other ventures he could possibly move into as he finishes out his MMA career, because he's looking like a shell of himself. He's now on a 6-fight losing streak. And while he did look decent in this fight with Bobby Green, I think he could have looked better. And a Tony Ferguson pre-Justin Gaethje might have had a very different fight with Bobby Green. But man, that Justin Gaethje fight did a number on Tony Ferguson. It was really hard to watch. I remember that fight during the pandemic. There was no crowd, and you could just hear all those shots. Whenever Justin Gaethje hit him, cracked him, you could hear it, pow, pow, just the smacking of the gloves hitting his face and his body. And I think that damage has finally caught up to him. He still seems like a durable fighter. He didn't get knocked out by Bobby Green, who we know has heavy hands and can knock people out. I wish the best for Tony Ferguson. Again, I'm not calling for his retirement. I do think that he needs to start looking at other ventures as his career starts to come towards its end. First fight of the main card, Michael Chiesa versus Kevin Holland. This fight kind of went exactly how I thought it was going to go, if I'm being honest with you. Michael Chiesa is a little older now. He hasn't fought in a while. Coming out fighting somebody like Kevin Holland, who's been very active and fighting in different weight classes. Michael Chiesa just looked lost and very anxious. Panic shots, very stressed. His stress level was very high at the beginning of the fight. And I think as a fighter, personally, when you manage or cannot manage your stress levels, that says a lot about where you are in the fight, in the particular fight. I'm not talking about, in a career or anything like that. But when the fight starts to get a little tough and you don't know what to do and you kind of seem lost, which he did, I kind of knew that the fight was going to be over. Unless he caught Kevin Holland with something crazy, stupid punch, or they ended up falling on the ground and he caught him in a submission or something. But I will tell you this, I did not expect for Kevin Holland to submit Michael Chiesa. I thought of his path to victory would have been keeping it on the feet, using his long strikes, which he was, and just popping him up on the outside and ended up getting a TKO or a knockout. But the fact that he ended up defending a takedown off of a knee and catching him in a dart stroke is incredible. So he is a black belt for a reason. And I'm glad to see him get a submission win, even though that win was a little whatever, it's Michael Chiesa. Now, here's the thing. I don't agree with him saying that he wants to go back up to middleweight, because those guys are pretty big. And if you don't want to get wrestled up, you should probably stay at a weight class that's a little bit closer to your frame, because when you go up to 185 and you start fighting these big boys, it doesn't matter how good your takedown defense is, they're going to be able to handle you and they're going to be able to take you down. So, I think the Michael Chiesa fight was good for him to showcase the wrestling that he's been working on, the defensive wrestling that he's been working on. I know you like your steaks, but I personally would say stay at 170. And sometimes, I feel like fighters, they keep changing weight classes because they don't want to be disciplined. And I'm not saying that's the case with Kevin Holland. By no means am I saying that, but it just seems to me like fighters would love to jump between weight classes and move back and forth because they don't want to be disciplined and focus on their weight and maintain their weight while they're out of camp in order to be ready to fight on 4, 5, 6 weeks notice and make it easier for themselves while they're in camp. Personally, I can't speak to that because I eat pretty clean most of the time and my weight stays pretty close to my weight class, so I don't have to worry about that. But I know a lot of other people put on a ton of weight. They like to eat a bunch of junk food and stuff. It's just not my style, but I also understand it. You know, if food is your thing and you like to indulge in different kinds of food, you're going to end up blowing up to a whole different weight class in between fights. If fighting is what you're supposed to do, and if fighting is what you want to do, and this is the career that you are making for yourself, and this is the career that you want, and you're taking it very seriously, you have to take it seriously in all aspects. And that includes diet, and it includes running, and it includes conditioning, it includes training, it includes all of those things. And to neglect one of those things because you enjoy food, personally, I think is not a wise move. But again, what the fuck do I know? Kevin Holland's in the UFC. I'm not. So there we go. Also, guys, we have 2 fight announcements that I'm super, super fucking excited about. One of them is Edson Barboza versus Sodiq Yusuff. Now, for those of you who have been watching the podcast for a long time, you guys know I'm from the DMV, the Washington, D.C. area. Sodiq is also from there. So, of course, I'm supporting the hometown brother. But, man, Edson Barboza is not an easy fight for anybody. And Edson is also one of my favorite fighters, too, for the fact that he's a great kickboxing, Muay Thai style. I'm excited for this fight. But if I'm being completely honest with you, as much as I love Edson, I think that Sodiq might knock him out. And the reason I say that is because we all know that Edson starts the fight out really strong. The first half of the fight, like the first round and a half, he's really good. And then as the fight carries on, his cardio kind of dwindles a little bit. And if that happens with Sodiq Yusuff, he might be going to sleep. We all know that Sodiq has power in his hands. We know he has good grappling. We know he has good grappling offense and defense. I'm very excited for this fight. And I hope that it actually happens this time because, you know, this was booked before. And I'm not sure exactly what happened. I think maybe it was Sodiq who got injured or Edson who got injured. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm excited to see what happens with that fight. And then the second fight that I'm not as excited about, but you know, it's one of those things where it's like, it could be a good fight. It could not be a good fight. Giga Chikadze versus Alex Caceres. Alex is a very interesting martial artist, does a lot of traditional techniques, but also a little unorthodox in the way that he moves and the way that he fights. That's a good fight for him. Alex is a good fight for Giga and vice versa. I think they're good for each other. And the reason I say that is because we obviously know that Giga's kickboxing is, you know, out of this world. He's most likely going to want to stay on the feet. But I think that Alex is not a slouch on the feet either. And we obviously know that his grappling is very good. So I'm curious to see how the fight plays out, where it goes, you know, how it goes in all fronts. Because something tells me that this is not going to be the kind of fun fight that we think it's going to be. I think it's going to be ugly, and I think it's going to be weird. And I say that because I know that Alex is not going to want to stand on the outside and eat those kicks from Giga. And if we learned anything from watching Giga's last fight with Calvin Kattar, we saw that pressure and the boxing from Calvin Kattar was a lot. And if Alex can kind of close the distance, get in his face a little bit, make it dirty, make it ugly, he has a chance of winning the fight. The thing is, though, we haven't really seen him do that too much. And so that's why I said I'm interested to see how it goes, because as somebody that doesn't really play that style too much, he might try to play that style, and that's what's going to make it ugly and awkward. So I'm curious to see it, though. And I would like to see who wins. If I had to make a pick, I'm probably going to go with Giga. But if I'm betting on it, I'm not putting any money on it. Initially, I wasn't going to say anything about this. Michael Bisping said that Jon Jones does not hold a candle to Tom Aspinall. I just want y'all to sit with that statement for a second. Jon Jones does not hold a candle to Tom Aspinall. I see where Michael Bisping is coming from, and I understand why he's saying it. We all know Bisping is British. He's going to support his countrymen, of course. I'm sure that he's probably spent some time training with Tom Aspinall. He's probably sees the potential in Tom Aspinall, as we all do. Tom is a fucking phenomenal fighter, amazing fighter. Can he beat most of the people in the heavyweight division? Absolutely. His style is beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. The footwork, like I mentioned on the last show, he moves like a middleweight. So the fact that he's a heavyweight moving the way that he does is a beautiful thing. I like to see it. However, are we going to act like Jon Jones is not Jon Jones? And y'all know I'm not the biggest Jon Jones fan here, but we also can't deny the fact that Jon Jones has incredible skill, one of the greatest fighters we've ever seen. And after what he just did to Cyril Gane, please, let's not act like he's not going to do something similar to Tom Aspinall. Is he going to finish him in the first round like that? Maybe, maybe not. But what I will tell you is this. All that footwork and all that moving around and all of that you think you're going to do with Jon Jones, it ain't happening. It's not happening. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Bisping is right and I'm wrong. What the fuck do I know? Michael Bisping is a former UFC champion. I don't know. But what I will tell you is that on paper, when you look at this fight and you look at what can happen, I will tell you this, 9 times out of 10, Jon Jones is going to take him down, beat him up, or choke him. That's it. Those are the options. And so, like I said, I understand why Bisping said it. He's trying to prop up his boy. This is your countryman. You want to make sure that somebody that's from your country that you want to support and you want to see them go up for a UFC title. You want to be the one to help them get that UFC title. You're trying to talk them up in the public so that the fans want to see the fight, so the UFC starts to think that they can book the fight. I'm not mad at it, Bisping. I'm just saying you look a little crazy. That's all. You look a little crazy. Let's not act like Jon Jones didn't have Lyoto Machida up against the cage gasping for air and then let him go, let his dead body drop. You know what I'm saying? Let's not act like he didn't just take Cyril Gane down, who has very similar footwork and a very similar style to Tom Aspinall, just took him down and choked him in 2 minutes. Let's not act like these things don't happen. Let's not act like he never beat DC. Yes, the steroids and all of that. Again, I already told y'all I'm not the biggest fan of Jon Jones as a person, but when it comes to fighting, we can't deny. We can't deny the skills. You can't. So Bisping, I'm sure you'll never watch this. I love you. I love everything you've done in the sport, but your commentating needs some work. And this take that you got on Tom Aspinall, delete it. Throw it away. Wherever you said it, go find the video, delete that shit right now because that's probably not going to age well. All right, guys. And of course, as you know, we have a UFC fight night card coming up this weekend. Cory Sandhagen versus Rob Font. I don't know how this fight happened, but it happened. They made it in the last couple weeks. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a little bit sad about it. I'm a little bit sad about this fight. And I'm sad about this fight because I like both fighters, but I also understand that most likely Cory Sandhagen is going to win this fight because he's a more complete fighter. I think he's the smarter fighter. And I think over a 5-round fight, as the fight goes on, Cory Sandhagen gets better. And the game plan that him and his team come up with for Rob Font, I think is going to be a very interesting one considering his skill set. And I'm curious to see what he does. But yeah, man, I love Rob Font. I love Cory Sandhagen. I don't see how Rob Font can really win this fight outside of a lot of pressure and some really tight boxing, but also very tight defense. I do think that we might see Cory Sandhagen wrestle a little bit, clinch a little bit, and stay on the outside a lot because you don't want to be in the pocket with Rob Font. That's not going to be a good time. Personally, I don't think that's going to be a good time. That fight I'm looking very forward to. Tatiana Suarez versus Jessica Andrade is a great fight. I like that Tatiana is just going straight. She's getting straight into it after being out for a couple years with some injuries. Let's be real. Tatiana's winning this fight. We all know that she's winning this fight. She's taking her down. She's going to beat her up on the ground, and she's going to submit her. I say Jessica Andrade gets finished in 2 rounds. Tatiana Suarez is just too good. We'll see how it plays out, but I just don't see how Jessica Andrade is going to beat Tatiana Suarez because she's not going to be able to stop the takedown. Now, if she does, that's going to be a problem, but I don't think that she will. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. But if Jessica Andrade wins, that's gonna be very interesting too, because to beat Tatiana Suarez is not going to be easy. And if she does that, I'm not saying that I would be surprised, but because, you know, Jessica Andrade is a former champion, but it would surprise me given the skill set that Tatiana Suarez has and how I think Tatiana has the perfect style to dominate Jessica Andrade. So we'll see how that fight plays out. All right, guys, and just a quick update for a few things going on with the channel. As you guys see, the name has changed. And also, I'm going to be moving these kind of episodes to Monday. I'm still going to premiere it at the same time. So I'm going to keep it at the same time here. But I'm also going to be doing a live chat. I haven't figured out a date and time for the live chat yet. But please make sure you subscribe to the channel. And you will be able to see it when I post it on YouTube. I'm going to make a post for it so you guys can see that on YouTube. I also post it on my personal Instagram page. I don't have anything else for you guys, but please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys when we do the live chat later this week. Peace.